Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Toronto's first Jewish psychedelic event. Yes, applause, correct response. So we're just going to start off with a little presentation so that everybody, I know a lot of people who signed up, you told me that some of you were like, I don't know what this is, I don't know what psychedelic Judaism is, I'm curious. So we're going to kind of set the tone. I'm going to talk a little bit about my views on this. We're going to go over some history, some personal kind of stories, and yeah, hopefully everybody finds it interesting. So yeah, this little presentation I have is called Tzfat, which in English is often called Safed, but nobody in Israel would call it Safed. They would always call it Tzfat, Kabbalah, and psychedelic Judaism. So this is me. I'm Marc Goldgrub. I'm a lawyer. I'm the founder of Green Economy Law and Avir, the space. I own and run the space. I'm not a Kabbalah expert. I find it very interesting, but I'm not a scholar on Kabbalah. I took a course on Kabbalah at the Hebrew University in 2011. I've been to Tzfat 3 times, and I've read a couple books, and that's the extent of my expertise. So we're going to cover a little bit about Tzfat. What is it? Where is it? We're going to talk about Lurianic Kabbalah. If you don't know what that means, don't worry. We're going to talk about psychedelic Tzfat. Then we're going to talk about Or Ein Sof, infinite light, and how that connects with some interesting things in psychedelics, and then psychedelic Judaism specifically. So Tzfat is a city in Israel. It's in the north of Israel, in Upper Galilee. It's near a town called Meron, which is famously the site of, can you see me? Yeah. Okay. It's the site where Shimon Bar Yochai was buried. We're going to talk a little about him in a second. It's one of Judaism's 4 holy cities. The 4 holy cities are Tzfat, Jerusalem, Tiberia, and Hebron. In the 1500s, a lot of exiled scholars and rabbis from Spain, they came to Tzfat. At the time, it was kind of not a bad time for Jews to be in Tzfat. It was an Ottoman territory at the time, and things got better and worse. But in this time, it was actually not bad. So a lot of Jews who got exiled from the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, and Portugal, they actually came to Tzfat, and they created an incredible center of learning there. They had a scene. They had a real interesting scene. So who is Shimon Bar Yochai? He was a rebel. He was a rabbi. I'm going to give you a couple of these pointers. He was a student of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is also another famous rabbi. He hid from the Romans for 12 years in a cave, apparently buried up to his neck in sand during the day, and him and his son would study during the day, buried, and then at night maybe they'd move around and get food and stuff. He is the subject, he's like the main character of the book The Zohar, which you may have heard of, and he is, by legend, the author of it, although no academic would accept that. Somebody else actually wrote it, but he's the kind of purported author, which was a common thing back in the day. People would write something and say, somebody else that you know who's more important actually wrote this book, and that would make it easier to kind of sell and distribute it. And he is famously buried at Meron, which is very close to Tzfat. And every year on Lag BaOmer, a lot of people go to Meron and have a big party, and it's all because everybody's really excited about that being the site where Shimon Bar Yochai is buried. So I first went to Tzfat. This is a picture of Tzfat that I took. I took it more recently, not in 2011, but the first time I visited Tzfat was in 2011. I was studying Kabbalah and the Arab-Israeli conflict at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and we went on a field trip to Tzfat. We just spent like an afternoon there, and I thought, wow, this is a very interesting city. There's a lot of stuff was painted white and blue. You can't see it in this picture, but it is the case. And there's a lot of artists selling stuff. I was like, okay, this is an interesting place, but we were just there for an afternoon. I did go to the Ari Mikveh with my teacher. We checked that out, and it was nice, but I didn't think that much of it. So why is Tzfat such a big deal? A lot, like I said, in the 1500s, there were a lot of really interesting rabbis in Tzfat, and they were very interested in Kabbalah. What is Kabbalah? Kabbalah, I actually kind of think of it almost like a religion within the religion of Judaism, and it's commonly thought of as the mystical or esoteric side of Judaism or branch of Judaism. It's quite expansive. It's hard to say Kabbalah is X because it's a huge, the term applies to a huge amount of interesting writing, which is kind of all over the place. So a couple of the very famous rabbis in Tzfat were Rabbi Yosef Karo, who wrote the Shulchan Aruch, which means the long table. It was a book of Jewish law, very, very famous, very highly regarded, not about Kabbalah, but he was interested in Kabbalah also, and apparently got transmissions from kind of like an angel, a Magid. Moshe Cordovero, who also did actually write some interesting things about Kabbalah. Rabbi Isaac Luria, the Ari, who is considered the most important character maybe in the history of Kabbalah, other than perhaps Shimon Bar Yochai. And Raim Chaim Vital, who was kind of his student. There's more chairs right there, you can just grab one. Rabbi Chaim Vital, he was a little bit like the Plato to the Ari's Socrates. The Isaac Luria, Ari, he didn't write down a lot. He wrote a little, but very, very little. Most of what he taught was oral, and most of our records of what he taught actually come to us through Chaim Vital, who also had his own interesting writings of his own, but he's most famous for recording Isaac Luria's writings, especially in a book called Etz Chaim, although this is a book that's 8 volumes long, so it's a huge body of work. And then it has a sequel called Pri Etz Chaim, the fruit of the tree of life. Etz Chaim means tree of life. So who was Rabbi Isaac Luria? He is probably the same age as me in this picture, because he didn't live that long. So he's probably, I'm 36, so he might be around 36 now. I'm vegan, so maybe I'm aging a bit better than him. Who was he? He was a rabbi. He was born in Jerusalem in 1534. He lived most of his life in Egypt. He spent 6 to 7 years in seclusion on an island in the Nile, and nobody knows why. Nobody knows why. Nobody knows what he was doing there. But we know that for about 6, 7 years, he just hung out on an island. Apparently, he would come home for Shabbat, but he wouldn't talk to his wife. He would just come home, eat, and then go back to hang out on the island. And he just did this for 6, 7 years, and it's kind of just like, nobody knows why. And he moved to Tzfat in 1569, 1570. So really, this is, he actually didn't spend a lot of time in Tzfat. But it's interesting, he didn't spend that much time in Tzfat, but he is the most kind of legendary character that Tzfat ever produced. Apparently, okay, I actually wanted to edit this. He could understand plants and animals. I'm not sure if he actually spoke to them, but he could apparently understand the language of plants and animals. He could read auras, he could speak to souls, apparently he spoke to Eliyahu all the time. Like, this guy was not in Tzfat very long, but the things people said about him were amazing, amazing, amazing. Like, he was regarded as really quite a character. He had all kinds of mystical visions. A lot of the teachings apparently came to him through visions, through angels. And he died at 38. He did not live very long. And he was only in Tzfat for 2 years. In 2 years, he gathered a bunch of disciples, did a bunch of great teachings, amassed an amazing reputation, and then died. Why is he called Ha'ari, the lion? It's an acronym. Okay, if you can read Hebrew, this says Ha'elohai Ravi Yitzchak. And the words Aleph, Resh, Yud in Hebrew spell Ha'ari. Ha'elohai Rabbi Yitzchak means the divine Rabbi Yitzchak. Yitzchak is Isaac, the divine Rabbi Isaac Luria. So he is buried in Tzfat Cemetery. Tzfat Cemetery is quite legendary, a lot of incredible teachers. It's visually very beautiful. This is a picture that I took of his grave. You can actually see somebody was praying there the day that I took this picture. It actually was not that easy to find his grave. It's quite big, but it's off to the side of the library. So he has a mikvah. There's a mikvah. It's a pool of groundwater. Nobody's coming and pouring water in here. This is just groundwater that's been there I don't know how long. You go into a little kind of cave. They have actually put like benches. There's one on the other side. It's not super clean. I wasn't crazy, but I actually cleaned it up the last time I was there because I felt so bad about how dirty it was because it's such a kind of holy, amazing place. And this is only accessible by men, unfortunately. And you come in, you basically strip naked, hop in this pool. It's cold. It's amazing. It feels really interesting. And when I stayed in Tzfat, the last 2 times I stayed in Tzfat in 2024 and a couple months ago, I would start every day getting up, going to the Ari Mikvah, hopping in the pool. That was the start of my day. And it's also basically in the cemetery, but it's not next to the Ari's grave. It's a little bit farther away from his grave. So let's talk a little bit about some of the teachings of Isaac Luria. The thing that he's most famous for is something called the Tzimtzum, which is the title of this event. Tzimtzum means contraction. And the idea was that in the beginning, all was Or Ein Sof. Everything was heavenly light. That was all there is. All of existence was just Or Ein Sof, endless light. And God had to contract to create like a space, like a hole where creation, anything else could exist other than just the perfection of God himself. This is you can leave it. So the kind of cosmology of Isaac Luria is God contracts, creates this space in which it's like think of it as almost like a black hole in which creation can exist, something other than God can exist, and then he has to it's kind of described as almost like shooting light into it. It's like it creates a space, okay, but now you just have emptiness. Let me shoot some divine light into it. Kabbalah is very sexual. There's a lot of sexual stuff in Kabbalah. You can imagine another situation. How do we create a human being? It's a little bit of a similar process. So the story is that God contracts himself, creates a space, and then he has to start like putting some stuff in the space. So he's putting divine light into the space, and everything's going into vessels. This idea of vessels or shells appears over and over in Kabbalah. So he's putting this divine light into vessels in the space, but according to this cosmology, the light was too strong, the vessels broke, and there's shards of divine light everywhere. This is a big catastrophe, that there's the shattering of the vessels, Shavirat HaKelim. And now we have to engage in tikkun, this idea of repair. We're repairing this catastrophe in the cosmos. We're all doing good things in the world. I think it's a little more complicated or interesting than that, more esoteric than just do good deeds and you're going to fix the Shvirat HaKelim. But yeah, that is kind of the basic idea, that we're all engaged in tikkun, in fixing the world and kind of moving towards this endpoint of perfection again, something like that. The idea of tikkun olam, there's all kinds of different versions of this in Judaism. I think this is a more esoteric version, not exactly the tikkun olam you learn at Hebrew school or Hebrew camp. Next. So let's talk about psychedelic Tzfat. I'm going to talk a little bit about my time in Tzfat. This is a picture I took when I was there in 2024. So in 2024, I came to Tzfat for 4 days. I'm going to say why in a second. At the time, so I did this trip to Israel. I was there for 2 weeks. I decided, okay, I'm going to spend some time in Tzfat. I knew there's a war going on, but the war was, I know that Hezbollah in Lebanon is bombing the north, but Tzfat's not like all the way in the north. It's north-ish. But I get to Tzfat and I'm like, where is everybody? Everybody's left, or half the people have left because we're being bombed. So you could actually see and hear rockets exploding. Like this was, I think, the balcony from my Airbnb. And you had an amazing view. You could actually see like rockets exploding, which was pretty crazy. I wasn't sure if I was going to stay there. I'm like, I don't know. The town's half abandoned. It's being bombed. I don't know if I'm going to stick around. There's more chairs over there if you want to grab one. Or if you want to sit with the chair with the Cheetos, you can. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to stick around. I'm not sure. Anyways, I ended up staying and having the most amazing time. I met the most amazing people, and it was a really incredible experience. I stayed the whole time I was supposed to stay. So why did I go to Tzfat? A big part of the reason I went to Tzfat again after 13 years was this book, Exile and Ecstasy, by Madison Margolin. And Sophie actually lent me this book.
I haven't seen it since. It's my first time seeing that book since 2024.
Correct. So I heard about this book on a podcast on Psychedelics Today, and I was like, oh my God, like this is the book for me, Psychedelic Judaism. Like that sounds cool. I actually didn't really know like there was much connection between these two things. And I read this book and I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. This is amazing. The stories are amazing. And Madison lives in Tzfat, and she talks a lot about how amazing Tzfat is. And I was like, wow, I haven't been to Tzfat in such a long time. I should go back to Tzfat. So this book actually motivated me to go back to Tzfat. And Tzfat's a very small city, so everybody knew Madison, or everybody I spoke to knew Madison. So it was interesting being there, and everybody's like, oh, have you met Madison? I'm like, no, but I've read her book. And I did actually meet her. I had lunch with her, and she was very impressive. So I became friends with a guy named Avraham at the Tzfat Gallery of Mystical Art. He's from Michigan. He makes amazing art. I would buy some of his art every time I go there. He's a very Zen guy. I felt like I got along with him immediately. I volunteered at a gluten-free vegan cafe called Element Cafe, run by a guy named Zev, who is a real character. And I was volunteering with him, helping put up a roof. I was making burritos for soldiers. The cafe wasn't actually open. It was mostly just making food for soldiers with no pay. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna help. I went to a bunch of shiurim. These are lessons. This was a picture that I took at one of these shiurs. It was such a beautiful view with the light coming in. And I actually asked everybody in the room, I said, like, this is such an image, like sitting there. I was like, what an image. Can I take a picture? They're like, yeah, you can take a picture. But there's shiurim all the time, like all over the place. It's like parties. It's like, you going to this shiur, you going to that shiur, oh, let's go to a shiur. And they're all like interesting, kind of like sermons about the Torah, about life, about Kabbalah. Really an amazing scene, still an amazing scene. 500 years later, still a scene. And lots of great art, still lots of great art. Every time I go, I buy lots of great art. I'm actually wearing a little bracelet I got there. I'm wearing a Sefirot necklace I bought in Tzfat. Just such amazing art, amazing artists. And the last couple of years, the town is very dependent on tourism. There's not been a lot of tourism over the last couple of years for obvious reasons. So I was happy not just to get great art, but to support the amazing artisans of Tzfat. And this was another mikvah that Avraham actually took me to, and you could go and dive in there. And other people actually, even when we went there early in the morning, there were some other yeshiva bucher who also came and did a little morning mikvah there. Everybody says, my soul had to be in Tzfat. How did you end up in Tzfat? Why are you in Tzfat while it's being bombed? Well, I'm from Colorado, I'm from Michigan, I'm from here, I'm from there, I'm from England, and I came to Tzfat, and my soul had to be in Tzfat. This is something you hear a lot in Tzfat. So let's talk about Ora Ein Sof. This is a Sefirot. This is an image that's very common in Kabbalah, and the idea is that each one of these circles kind of represents an aspect of God, and it's a very important thing. I'm not going to get too far into it. So the idea, Ora Ein Sof, is that in the beginning there was infinite light, and there's a lot of talk about this Ora Ein Sof, light without end, in Kabbalah. So this is it's a Lurianic idea. Apparently, Isaac Luria was not the first one to ever think of this idea, or Tzimtzum either, but this is something that he focused on a lot, this idea about the beginning. Before Tzimtzum, there was just infinite light. It filled all space. There was no boundary. And Chaim Vital also wrote about this, and he himself had a lot of interesting visions, talking to Eliyahu, very, very common thing among the Tzfat types. So there's like an interesting chain of transmission. Isaac Luria doesn't start all these things, but he's a very interesting point here. And then his student is Chaim Vital. And then a couple hundred years later, you have the Baal Shem Tov, another kind of mystic character who starts the Hasidic movement. And you see a lot of ideas kind of repeated by through this chain. And these ideas are quite interesting and kind of mind expanding. So here's a very famous letter that he wrote about his soul ascending. So he says, I performed an elevation of soul and saw wondrous things I had never seen before. During Rosh Hashanah, while leading the congregation, the Besh, that's the Baal Shem Tov, describes his body becoming inert while his spirit rose through dimensions populated by souls and angels. He encountered the chamber of the Mashiach and asked, when will you come, Master? The answer, when your well springs flow outward, when everyone can perform the Yichudim. These are kind of like meditations and soul ascents that you are capable of. He writes, receiving teachings he was forbidden to reveal. Forbidden teachings is a big thing. Everybody's like, oh, I learned this thing, but I can't tell you about it. I'm still bound by this. Very common. You hear it from all these guys. Even Luria was like, don't tell anybody all the things I'm teaching. And Isaac, Chaim Vital's writing it down. Yeah, no problem. And when he died, he actually he had a student, and he said, this book that I wrote, burn it. His student was like, nope. So very, very common. In every letter, there are worlds and souls and divinity, and they ascend and connect and unify. Another big idea in Kabbalah, every letter having importance. Next slide. So Dov Ber of Meserich, he's like the student of the Baal Shem Tov. There's an interesting story about when he first meets the Baal Shem Tov opens Etz Chaim of Chaim Vital and asks Dov Ber to elucidate a certain passage. He did so to the best of his ability. The Baal Shem Tov declared, actually, you know nothing about this real passage. Let me tell you what it really means. And he starts talking about it, and suddenly a bunch of angels appear and start listening to him. And Dov Ber, actually, he wasn't that impressed with the Baal Shem Tov until this point, and then he sees a bunch of angels listening to him, and he says, this guy's, maybe I'll stick around. And then Nachman of Breslov, maybe you've heard of Nachman of Breslov. He was the Baal Shem Tov's grandson, very revered rabbi, wrote a lot of interesting stuff. This is just one quote. He has a lot of quotes, and all this stuff has there's a lot of reverence for Ha'ari in all of their work. And this is an interesting quote. In Hebrew it says, Va'afilo b'hastara shebetoch ha'hastara, bevadai gam sham nimtzeh Hashem yitbarach. Even in a concealment within a concealment, certainly also there is found the Lord, blessed be He. So let's go back to why are we seeing these people dancing here? In Israel, this is a very common thing. These Nachmanites or Breslovers, they will pull up with a van. This might be their van here. And there's a big speaker on the van, and they will blast Hasidic techno and dance to it. And it looks like this. They're really into like dancing. And I actually have like a Hasidic techno workout mix that I quite like. So in a concealment within a concealment, let's think back to the Tzimtzum. I think this is actually a Tzimtzum reference. So when God contracts in the story of the Tzimtzum, is the space without God? Where does God go if he contracts? Where is he going to go? You could say it's not necessarily a contraction, it's a concealment, that this space created, it's not that God isn't there, but that God is concealed in the space. So we're saying, even in a concealment within a concealment, even in this space, in times, difficult times, where it seems like where God has left us, he's also there. This is a theme that runs through Rabbi Nachman's writing, among other things. And this quote, V'afila b'hastara, there's actually a song, and it's been covered by many, many people. So if you search, like in Spotify, V'afila b'hastara, if you need to know how to write that, I can help you. But you'll find that there's many, many versions of the song, and it's quite a good song. So, okay, how does this tie into psychedelics? So there's a lot of different psychedelics. There's mushrooms and LSD and ayahuasca and DMT, 5-MeO DMT, ibogaine, and many, many more. I actually think that the most interesting psychedelics for the purposes of psychedelic Judaism are DMT and 5-MeO DMT. And DMT, it's something, it exists in a lot of things. Like all of you have DMT right now in your brain, but very little of it. It's not causing you to hallucinate, although some people say that when you sleep, when you dream, it's DMT. It can be synthesized when you do ayahuasca. That's actually a plant. You're consuming the DMT in a plant. And another plant is basically making sure that your system doesn't digest it too fast so it has an effect on you. But ayahuasca takes very long. If you have like pure DMT, which you can vape or smoke, that apparently takes like 15 minutes. And 5-MeO DMT is a different molecule. It's a very different thing. And the experience is quite different. 5-MeO DMT is famously, often people get it from a toad, Sonoran River Desert toad. You can lick the toad, or you can get also synthesized 5-MeO DMT. The difference between them is DMT is supposed to be more like you go to a different place and you meet a bunch of different beings like angels or aliens or animals, all kinds of interesting beings, and people talk about like, wow, I was in this other place, other dimension. I could think totally straight. And like some people say it's more real than real. And they talk about meeting incredible things. And when you hear the Baal Shem Tov say, I go to the highest chamber and I met a bunch of angels there, this actually sounds a lot like people's experiences on DMT. And 5-MeO DMT, people talk also about leaving their body. They go up somewhere else. I've heard it described as the place you go before you're born and after you die. And people talk about experiencing white light, lots of white light. And a lot of people say it feels like dying. So here's actually some quotes from studies from people with specifically, I think this is both 5-MeO and DMT. I dissolved into bright white light. I no longer had a body. I could see that every atom was alive and conscious, radiating light. This is from Rick Strassman, a well-known, this is DMT, not 5-MeO, this is just DMT. And Rick Strassman actually, He's a doctor, and actually, I'm kind of getting ahead to the next slide. He wrote a book specifically connecting the Torah and DMT. The self was gone, but awareness was still there. Vast, luminous. Luminous is from light. Empty. And first there was terror and blackness, and then possibly a light that was everything. I understood this is what is and always is always there. Stan Groff, who's also Jewish. So this idea of experiencing a white light, this incredible white light, feeling like I'm dying, I've left my body, and I go to heaven or something, and I'm seeing white light. This sounds like Or Ein Sof. This sounds like a lot like the things that Isaac Luria and the people around him talked about. It sounds like they're kind of having a similar experience. And I don't think that Isaac Luria was doing DMT, but we do know that they were engaged in all kinds of fasting, all kinds of interesting meditation, and it's possible that they were able to get their body to produce certain kinds of DMT or some certain processes that they were able to get themselves into these mystical, ecstatic states, even without necessarily going and licking a Sonoran River desert toad. So like I said, Rick Strassman, who there's a documentary on Netflix called DMT the Spirit Molecule. It's based on his book, DMT the Spirit Molecule. He's also Jewish, and in this book, he talks specifically about how he feels like there's a connection between DMT and the soul of prophecy. He specifically is talking about DMT and not 5-MeO. So he actually comes to different conclusions than me. He doesn't talk that much about, or at least I haven't seen it in looking through the book, and I haven't read the whole book cover to cover, about this idea of Or Ein Sof that much. But it's interesting that he actually, and this book, this one, not Spirit Molecule, this one was written in 2014. So he was onto this long before I was. This is from Ram Dass's book. If you know Ram Dass, his real name is Richard Alpert, also Jewish. He wrote a very famous book, Be Here Now, and like a part of Be Here Now, the book is divided into kind of 4 interesting sections. Part of it's like all these interesting pages with illustrations, and here's this page, this to me looks a lot like this idea of Or Ein Sof, this incredible infinite light, and here he says, a place in which the flame never flickers, and some other interesting words like the sun, Or Ein Sof. So, bringing things back to Earth. So it's interesting that a lot of this is not the Jewish psychedelic community exists. This is the first time we're doing something in Toronto, but this exists. This is a WhatsApp group that I'm a part of. It has 1,024 members. It is capped. It is at its capacity. You actually cannot join this group. I created a Canadian subgroup that you can join if you want. There's less members than that. But the Jewish psychedelic community is a community that exists, and it's all over the world. The major centers are NYC and Israel, and it has incredible infrastructure. I think this is going to be the subject of a Substack post I'm going to be working on soon. So this is Ram Dass. This is when he's a little older, Richard Alpert, and this is Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi. I often call him like the psychedelic rabbi, a really interesting rabbi. He was hanging out with Timothy Leary and Ram Dass in the 60s, experimenting with psychedelics, and you could say that maybe these two were the beginning of the modern Jewish psychedelic community, which since then has had a lot more coherent. It's gone beyond just, oh, there are some Jews doing psychedelics and working in psychedelics too. There's a community with groups, with infrastructure, with connectors, with newsletters. So Madison Margolin, before she wrote the book, she wrote an article about Judaism's psychedelic renaissance. This is from 2021, and talked about. I think she was one of the organizers of the Jewish Psychedelic Summit, and this was actually trying to start building infrastructure around a Jewish psychedelic community. And then after October 7th, as many Jews will attest, including myself, there was a feeling among a lot of Jews about wanting to come back to the community and also being interested in Judaism again. And for a lot of the people in the psychedelic community, there was a lot of interest in, is there a way we can integrate Kabbalah here? Is there a way we can use psychedelics to deal with the trauma? And there are now Jewish psychedelic retreats. There's quite a few of them. They're all over the world. Different people are running them. And there are psychedelic retreats. There are Jewish meditation retreats. It's quite interesting to see how official this is actually becoming. And a friend of mine, another Jewish psychedelic lawyer named Adriana Kurtzer, she started a newsletter called the Jewish Healing Society. And this newsletter, not sure exactly, maybe like once a month. I don't know if she publishes with perfect regularity, but she uses this newsletter to cover what everyone she knows in the Jewish psychedelic community is doing. Every newsletter is, this is what's happening with people I know in Israel, this is what's happening in New York, this is what's happening in California, this is what's happening in Colorado with Jews and psychedelics, and I am often in there as well because I have a very good relationship with Adriana. So maybe a month ago, I was thinking, there's this incredible Jewish psychedelic community all over the world, but nothing happening in Toronto. And I know Jews in Toronto who are interested in psychedelics, who are working in psychedelics. I went to Lag BaOmer at Chabad here on Spadina, and I meet somebody working in a peyote company. I meet somebody who's a psychedelic therapist. I meet a rabbi who's interested in psychedelics. I'm like, this Lag BaOmer is like a Jewish psychedelic meetup. But I thought it would be interesting. Somebody should do an official Jewish Toronto psychedelic meetup. And if not me, who? If not now, when? So I basically started thinking about it. I came home, created a Luma event, and now you're all here today. And thank you for that. So that's kind of the intro.